Hello and welcome to Network. My name is Sphumelele Zondi with your technology and social media news. Remember that if you want to be a part of this tech conversation, you can find us on email. We are on newsnetwork@sabc.co.za. That's newsnetwork@sabc.co.za. It's SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also use the hashtag SABC Network. Here's what's coming up in the program. As Lesotho has become the first country in Africa to get 5G, we look at future possibilities of the technology. Google is celebrating 20 years of search. Today, we look at how this has evolved over the years. And our discussion looks at hackathons, specifically Ignite Hack. Public Service and Administration Minister Ayanda Dlodlo is here for that one. Hello and thank you very much for joining us, Minister.
Thank you for inviting me.
Why are you so interested in these hackathons?
Well, I have a legislative responsibility to ensuring that ICT policy is streamlined within the public service, but also in terms of our obligations as members of the Open Government Partnership. We also have to look at innovative ways of service delivery, but also innovative ways of getting in touch and communicating with our people.
All right, we'll have that discussion later in the program, but first the technology and social media news. Now, as Lesotho has become the first country in Africa to get 5G, we look at future possibilities of the technology. Vodacom recently launched 5G in Lesotho. The Southern African Kingdom became the first to receive it in Africa. This will help in the near future of driverless cars.
5G is important is for very low latency. Latency is the response time on a network, and low latency is very important when you have things like self-driving cars or remote operations where you can't have a 1 second delay between the car deciding should it turn left or right at the intersection to miss someone or not. So low latency, sub 10 milliseconds, and very high speed over 1 gigabit per second is what makes 5G unique.
Vodacom says 5G will also allow them to provide a better Internet of Things services.
The next thing that we are doing is we are building a platform that aggregates all the different sensors that you will have in different things that are out there that need to be connected. You need to connect a factory, you need to connect a pole out in the streets, you need to connect a car, you need to connect that. You need to aggregate all of that and bring it onto a common platform for you to be able to extract the data out of that common platform, and then put on top of that some analytics capability.
One of their services that has done well in many African markets is M-Pesa. It started with Safaricom in Kenya.
M-Pesa has evolved into a very sophisticated bouquet of service, including an enterprise solution, including bill payments, and now we're going into the entire digital space. We have an app that is making M-Pesa go to the OTT space. So we're just scratching the surface, and M-Pesa has the potential to grow into a fully fledged payment platform in the continent.
When 5G launches, one will be able to work with augmented reality like I'm doing here. When I put on these glasses, I can see a hologram of a person who isn't visible to the naked eye. He's standing next to the vehicle. He's telling me about the features of the car. South Africa still needs to release the spectrum needed for 5G. Now, Google is celebrating 20 years of search. They started with just a word, but now have moved to pictures and voice command. We spoke to Google's Luke McKend about this.
Quite an ambitious task that we set ourselves right back in the beginning 20 years ago. At the time, there were probably only, I think, about 130 or maybe 300 million internet users. So it sounds like a big number, but compared to today, where you've got trillions of items of information, quite clearly it's a very different thing. And that remains still Google's core mission, is to organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful to as many people as possible. Well, I think the important thing is that there's always a range of different points of entry to search. So as much as there's the Google feed, for instance, which would curate some of those results, there's still always the traditional one box that people can use, and any combination of words can be used to ask what you like. There are some really interesting apps out there at the moment that are making use of some of the augmented reality software that Google has produced that enable you to, for instance, using a product called Google Lens, you can, I think it either requires a Samsung S9 or a Pixel phone, but you can actually point your phone at any object. It'll try and identify that object and potentially then point you at where you can buy either that object or items very similar to it. So, already we have a virtual reality type system that's available, albeit with a high-end device, but we're getting there quite quickly. I'm using voice commands far more frequently, and that notion that you can actually talk to your device, I think, is something that's going to become a lot more prevalent, and actually almost having a conversation with search in order to get the information that you need.
In its final week, the Fak'ugesi African Digital Innovation Festival explores music culture. Producer Sandile Hlangane takes us to the festival.
I ain't looking for no drama.
Technology has had a remarkable effect on modern music. As our society continues to expand technologically, the music industry continues to expand as well.
With the advancement of music and technology, we are now able to share music through various things. So from cell phones, you could WhatsApp a song, you could email a song, or you can simply share it to someone's Facebook or even Instagram page. I think what that has done, it's allowed people to be able to share music on a more global scale. Whereas if in previous years, if I had to share music with a friend, I would physically have to be with them. And with all this improvements in technology, we can share the same thing from different parts of the world.
Gone are the days when artist success was decided by the number of times their singles played on the radio. Artists now have the ability to simply drop a project online and allow the streaming numbers to decide.
I see us in the future not relying on institutions like record labels and basically being self-sufficient and empowering yourself. I mean, right now what we're doing at the Beats Lab is a bunch of guys who are probably self-taught in music, learned how to play the music themselves, didn't have to go to an institution, which is not a bad thing, It basically opens you up to just finding new ways and new resources to be able to make music and release it as well.
These advances have not only impacted the type of music artists create, but have also affected how listeners consume music.
The digital era of music has really pushed the boundaries for a lot of artists and made the idea of creating and getting the idea out much more easier than you getting the concept of being in studio. Because, we don't even have vocal booths nowadays. Frank Ocean's Blonde was recorded sitting next to his producer.
With technology now and things like Serato, you can basically look at a screen and you can see and you can be able to match up, and it tells you the BPMs and you can match songs together and you can transition. Before, everything was done by ear, but now it's like you can do both.
Whether you are learning, creating, or simply listening to it, technology will make your musical experience richer and more accessible.
After the break, we chat to Public Service Minister Ayanda Dlodlo about Ignite Tech and other hackathons. SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Use network at sabc.co.za on email. Stay with us.
Minister, they don't care first about the backyarders, and then we are sick and tired, and we are fighting, mostly family issues. That's why we want to go and build our shacks so that we can live with our children.
Our province is on the move all the time. The more houses are delivered, the more people move into our province.
Isibuhlungu ngaphakathi ngiko sesenza intuthu njengaphakathi kwasempumelelo. Izindlu zethu enelempa angeke iziphele singakazitholi izindlu.
My opinion, Mr. Infantino and FIFA, everybody agreed that VAR is not going well. It's not going well, that's the reality. There's a lot of complaints. We just need to know who is refereeing the game, who take decisions in the game. We have the right to know, the people have the right to know.
It is SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. News Network at sabc.co.za. Now, Ignite Hack is happening at the University of Johannesburg. The hackathon brings together young people from across the country. They're using tech to try and find some solutions to solve some of today's problems. Joining me in studio to discuss this is Public Service and Administration Minister Ayanda Dlodlo. Hello, and thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Ignite Hack. What's happening?
Well, it's a national solutions-oriented exercise that brings together a lot of people from all walks of life, academia, from business, from the public service, from the public sector. And we have, as of a few minutes ago, Tiani told me that we've got about 404 registered geeks. That is your analysts, your technology developers, those people that are working in the ICT sector, that create and develop apps and stuff like that. We've got about 404 of them. It would mean that we're about 104 oversubscribed because we had thought our target was 300, but there's been such a hype and such a national interest in this. And we're hoping that it will help us come up with solutions towards dealing with the challenges that government experiences, but also in terms of service delivery enhancement and improvement.
Right, it's not the first hackathon you're involved in.
It's not, but this is the biggest.
This is the biggest?
This is the biggest, yeah.
Tell us about the other ones. What sort of solutions come out of these hackathons?
Well, we have, for instance, your GovChat. That has been one of the most known, the well-known one that has come out, which helps helps our citizens to interact with their councillors, but it will be elevated to a national level where citizens will be able to talk to their national representative, so to speak. We also have Yusuf Abramji's Namola. So we have these technologies that come up from time to time and these apps that come up from time to time that actually help us with some of the work that we're doing. We have the Center for Public Service Innovation, which also harnesses these new technologies for unleashing into the public service. The uptake is not as good. I would like to see greater uptake in terms of departments taking on some of the apps that come through, some of the solutions that come out of these hackathons. But with this one, we are really hoping that we'll have something that will be able to sell at a national, provincial, and a local government level.
For those who don't know, you talk about solutions and the uptake. What actually happens at a hackathon?
Well, these young kids who are much smarter than I could ever hope to be, and probably smarter than you too, they come up with various solutions, having gone through data that would be presented to them from data that we have in our archives as government, whether it's from Stats SA or from various departments. But some of the data is data that they collate. For instance, Uber is a taxi transport company, but it's one of the biggest holders of data. So it's data that comes out of those institutions and organizations that you would not expect to have that type of information that would help us to resolve some of the challenges that government is facing. So it's the use of information to bring up technologies and also bring up solutions to assist in service delivery enhancement.
You mentioned that academia is involved. It's taking place at the University of Johannesburg. The role that they play, universities there?
Well, they're hosting us, and my understanding is that the UJ is one of the best universities in the country when it comes to issues of ITC, but also the Fourth Industrial Revolution. They are the trailblazers. So we chose them from that perspective to say this is the university that would like to champion, that would like to partner with to champion some of the work that we do. They're not the only university. We have the University of South Africa, but we're also looking at other universities to come on board, but not only South African universities. We're looking beyond our borders also to partner with SADC and other countries to ensure that what is harnessed amongst young people across the globe finds its way to trying to enhance what we do in South Africa, but also help us to unearth some of the solutions that we would not have come up with.
You were saying that you're hoping that the uptake by government departments would be larger of these solutions that come out of these hackathons.
We've had from the Center for Public Service Innovation quite a number of solutions that have come up. But because of budgetary constraints and other constraints, the uptake has not been as one would have expected it to be. The interest is there. For instance, in the Department of Health, we have a presence. The Department of Science and Technology, they're coming on board with us. There's quite a number of departments that are coming through. So they will see firsthand the work that is being undertaken by these young minds, South African minds, that are trying to bring solutions to not only government, but to their own lives as well.
One would wonder why it's public administration and perhaps not the Department of Telecommunications. Why have you taken on this task? You touched briefly on that when the show started.
The responsibility for ITC policy in government rests with the Department of Public Service and Administration. E-government rests with this department. And it is enshrined in both the Public Administration Management Act and also the Public Service Act. But over and above that, we have a responsibility because we're responsible for service delivery improvement within the administration. So in our interaction and our membership to the Open Government Partnership, we have a responsibility to develop and unearth technology that will help us to interact with communities, but also for citizen engagement purposes, but also to enhance the work of government. We also have a responsibility that is also carried through our work in the Africa Peer Review Mechanism. So all of that becomes a responsibility of our department.
Do you enjoy
the help of well, I love this. I love working with young people. I love working with people that are much smarter than me because it also makes me look good.
All right, so Minister Ayanda Dlodlo, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, Minister Ayanda Dlodlo, there is Public Service Minister in South Africa, telling us about Ignite Tech and other hackathons that she's involved in, really. Now, we also caught up with jazz musician Nomfundo Gqaluva, and she told us what her favorite piece of technology is.
Hi, my name is Nomfundo Gqaluva. I'm a jazz musician. My favorite gadget is my Mac Airbook. I love it because it's versatile, it's fast, it's light, and generally it just makes me feel like I'm in touch with the world.
It is SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. News Network at sabc.co.za on email. Now, 9 teams are racing from Pretoria to Cape Town using solar-powered vehicles, and digital supermodels are creating divisions in the fashion industry. These are just some of the stories that made tech headlines in the last week.
The South African Solar Challenge kicked off over the last weekend with 9 teams testing the limits of solar power in a road race from Pretoria to Cape Town.
This event in South Africa is considered to be one of the tougher events in the world because it's out on the highway, because it crosses the country. We're going through different climatic zones from north of Johannesburg down to the coast and around the coast to Cape Town. We're going to see a variety of different conditions.
Teams from various colleges and universities in Netherlands, Switzerland, China and South Africa are taking part.
The solar cars, it's something that looks futuristic, so who wouldn't want to be part of a team that's dealing with something that would sort of solve a problem such as fuel in future, because we would want to see us having solar cars just so that you drive to wherever you want to drive to without having to spend money for fuel.
The 6th edition of the challenge will see vehicles covering distances between 2,500 and 5,000 kilometers through 18 towns over 8 days. Now heading over to the US of A. Instagram CEO Kevin Systrom says he's called it quits, along with his chief technology officer and co-founder Mike Krieger. The two announced last Monday that they'd be stepping down from their posts at the photo sharing platform, but they didn't explain why. Instagram, which Facebook bought in 2012 for $1 billion, has more than 1 billion active monthly users. It's also Facebook's fastest growing slice of revenue, and the announcement comes at a tricky time for the parent company. And now in England. The fashion world is often criticized for using too few real women, and these 3 are the ultimate example. Shudu, Margaret, and G are computer-generated models for the French luxury brand Balmain, an attempt to appeal to a younger tech-savvy crowd. Shudu is the best known. Created by visual artist Cameron James Wilson last year, her Instagram account has 145,000 followers. Balmain's not alone in using the models, but their rise has split the fashion world.
I am not into a digital model. I am into real people with personalities and opinions, and the idea of digital models is something that I hope does not gain popularity.
I think the CGI for computer, for website, for selling purposes, for walking backwards and forwards and showing the product on the website is genius, but not necessarily to bring life and flavour into a brand, because that's much more personal.
Others fear for women's self-esteem and that the online world of artificial beauty standards just got that bit more unreal.
A digital model with over 100,000 followers on Instagram. Now, after one of the creators of WhatsApp, Brian Acton, was quoted saying he sold his users' data to a larger benefit when referring to the sale of WhatsApp to Facebook a few years ago, today on Twitter, we're asking if you feel your privacy is safe online. Now, 13% of you say yes, and overwhelming 67% of respondents say they don't feel their privacy is safe online. There is 7% of people who say they don't have social media, and yet they still manage to answer our social media poll. Another 13% of respondents say it does not matter. And that's all we have for you. Find us on SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's News Network at sabc.co.za on email. We leave you with visuals of the solar cars taking off from Pretoria. From me and the rest of the network team, have a good one. Bye-bye.